June 15th, 2013, Tempe, Arizona, 3:17 a.m. The streets are quiet, the desert air thick with summer heat. A 19-year-old girl named Adrienne Salinas stands alone under a flickering street lamp. She dials a cab, her voice trembling through the phone. "I need a ride home." But Adrienne Salinas never made it to that pickup location. By sunrise, she'd vanished without a trace. A month later, her remains were discovered 30 miles away in the Tonopah Desert, scattered, sun-bleached, and silent. This should be a straightforward story: a missing girl, a taxi never taken, a tragic end. But nothing about Adrienne's disappearance adds up. Why did the cab driver find no one at the pickup spot just minutes after her call? How did her belongings, her shoes, her phone end up miles apart, as if dropped by someone or something? And why? After a decade of forensic tests, search parties, and dead ends, does this case still scream something isn't right? Adrienne's story isn't just about a girl who got lost. It's about a night where logic collapsed, where a single decision, a wrong turn, a stranger's face, a split-second mistake erased a life. But the desert doesn't talk. It keeps its secrets buried under sand and scorching sun. So tonight, we retrace those final hours. We ask the questions that still keep detectives awake, and we confront the chilling truth. Sometimes, the most haunting mysteries aren't about what happened. They're about why we'll never know. Adrienne Salinas wasn't just another headline, not just another photo on a missing poster. Let's strip away the true crime jargon, the speculation, the noise. Who is she? She was the girl who worked double shifts at a retirement home, saving up for nursing school. The one who danced in her kitchen while making mac and cheese at 2 a.m. Her coworkers called her Sunshine, not just for her smile, but for the way she'd sit for hours with lonely residents, holding their hands, listening to stories they'd never get to finish. Her best friend, Maria, still remembers their last text. "Come over. I'm baking cookies and we're gonna binge Vampire Diaries." That was Adrienne, impulsive, warm, always chasing joy. But on June 15th, that light dimmed. She'd spent the night at a friend's apartment near Mill Avenue. Nothing unusual, laughing. Music. The kind of summer night that feels endless when you're 19. But around 3 a.m., something shifted. Witnesses say she seemed agitated. Maybe an argument. Maybe a bad decision. She stormed out, barefoot, into the dark. What happened next is a void. We know she called Desert Cab at 3:17 a.m. The dispatcher heard muffled sobs, the rustle of fabric, then a shaky "please hurry." 7 minutes later, the driver arrived. No Adrienne, just an empty street, the buzz of a dying streetlight, and a single sandal lying in the gutter. This is the cruelty of unsolved cases. The living, breathing person gets reduced to fragments: a phone record, a discarded shoe, a timestamp. But Adrienne was more than that. She was the friend who'd sneak candy into movie theaters, the daughter who called her mom every Sunday without fail, the girl who still had a stuffed elephant named Peanut on her bed. So when you hear remains found in the desert, don't think of bones. Think of the birthday cards she'll never sign, the nursing degrees she'll never earn, the family that still sets a plate for her at Christmas, hoping against reason that she'll walk through the door. Adrienne Salinas existed, and her story didn't end in the desert. It's still being written by every person who refuses to look away. To understand Adrienne's disappearance, we need to step into the suffocating heat of that June night. Tempe, Arizona, a college town usually buzzing with life, was eerily still. The temperature hadn't dropped below 107 degrees. Adrienne had been at a friend's apartment near Mill Avenue, a strip known for its bars and late-night chaos. Witnesses say the mood shifted after midnight. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was an argument lost to time. What we know, by 3 a.m., Adrienne was barefoot, angry, and insisting she'd walk home alone. Friends begged her to stay. She refused. But here's the first crack in the story. At 3:17 a.m., Adrienne called Desert Cab. Her voice, captured in the dispatch recording, is frayed but coherent. "I'm at the corner of Rural and Terrace. I just want to go home." The driver, a 12-year veteran named Luis, arrived in 7 minutes. No Adrienne, no footprints, no signs of a struggle, just a single sandal lying in the dust. Its strap snapped clean. So what happened in those 7 minutes? Did she panic and bolt into the desert? Disoriented and desperate? Did someone intercept her between that phone call and Luis's arrival? Or did she vanish into the labyrinth of alleyways behind the apartment complex? Where security cameras were as scarce as mercy, the desert doesn't testify. It erases. By sunrise, the sand had already reclaimed any trace of her path. The heat warped timelines, even the coyotes, scavengers of the Arizona wastes, left no clues in the scattered debris of her phone and clothes. But let's linger on those 7 minutes. 3:17 a.m., the call. 3:24 a.m., the cab arrives. In 420 seconds, a life unravels. Adrienne's last text, sent at 3:06 a.m. to her ex-boyfriend. "We need to talk." Was it a cry for help? A final attempt to mend something broken? Or a red herring, dangling in the dark? The police traced her steps, retraced them, then traced them again. They found nothing. No witnesses, no fingerprints, just the desert, vast and indifferent, stretching out like a taunt. This isn't just a timeline, it's an obituary for certainty. A reminder that even in our age of satellites and surveillance, some stories dissolve into the void. Adrienne Salinas didn't just disappear. She slipped through the cracks of a night that refused to remember her. The search for Adrienne Salinas began before the sun rose on June 16, 2013. Friends, family, and strangers fanned out across Tempe, stapling posters to telephone poles, shouting her name into the bleached silence of the desert. But this wasn't a movie. There were no helicopters circling overhead, no bloodhounds picking up a scent, just the crunch of boots on gravel and the slow, suffocating realization that the Arizona wilderness doesn't give up its dead easily. By day 3, the heat had already won. Temperatures soared to 112 degrees. Search volunteers collapsed under the weight of their own sweat. Drones scanned the scrubland, but the glare of the sun turned the footage into a blur of sand and shadows. Then, a break. A hiker found one of Adrienne's sandals near a dried-up creek bed. Its strap torn, the plastic buckle cracked. It lay half-buried in the dirt, as if kicked off in a hurry. But this wasn't a clue, it was a taunt. The sandal led searchers to a frayed tank top snagged on a cactus spine 200 yards away. Then, a shattered cell phone. Its screen spiderwebbed. Battery dead. These weren't answers. They were pieces of a puzzle that refused to fit. The tank top showed no blood. No tears. The phone, wiped clean of fingerprints by the sandstorm that blew in that night. Even the voicemails Adrienne left in her final hours were lost. Deleted by a system that purges recordings after 14 days. The desert is a liar. It teases you with hope, then burns it away. For weeks, volunteers scoured the wasteland. They found water bottles, discarded camping gear, animal bones, everything except Adrienne, until July 14th, when a rancher in Tonopah, 30 miles southwest of Tempe, stumbled on a human skull, then a ribcage, a femur, scattered across a half-mile radius, bleached white by the sun. Dental records confirmed it. These were Adrienne's remains. But the discovery only deepened the mystery. Forensic experts arrived, armed with tools and theories. They traced the trajectory of the bones, hoping to pinpoint where she died. But coyotes had dragged them for miles. The heat had liquefied tissue, erasing DNA. Even the fractures in her skull, were they from a fall? A blow? Were too weathered to interpret. The desert had rewritten her death, scribbling over the evidence like a child with a black marker. The police tried to stitch the story together. Maybe Adrienne, disoriented and dehydrated, wandered into the desert after missing her cab. Maybe she shed her clothes in a heat-induced delirium, a common symptom of fatal hyperthermia. But nothing explained why her remains ended up 30 miles from where she vanished, or why her shoes and phone were found in opposite directions, or why her ex-boyfriend's alibi held up, despite his history of violence. Then there were the whispers. A trucker reported seeing a girl matching Adrienne's description hitchhiking near Interstate 10 the morning she disappeared. A psychic claimed to feel a struggle near a remote desert wash. None of it led anywhere. The tips piled up, a mountain of maybes, while the Salinas family buried what little was left of their daughter in a closed casket funeral. The hardest truth? Some cases aren't built for closure. Adrienne's file remains open. But after a decade, even the detectives admit privately, the trail is ice cold. The sandal, the tank top, the phone, they're not clues. They're relics, ghosts of a night that swallowed a girl whole. And the desert, It never cared. It kept right on burning. Adrienne Salinas' death certificate reads accidental. Official cause exposure. Dehydration. A tragic misstep under a lethal sun. But in the quiet corners of Tempe, in the hushed conversations of online forums and coffee shops, people ask, since when does an accident leave so many questions? Let's start with the facts. The medical examiner found no broken bones, no bullet wounds, no ligature marks, just sun-bleached bones stripped bare by time and scavengers. To the state of Arizona, this was enough. Adrienne got lost, succumbed to the heat, and the desert did the rest. But here's where the story frays. First, her clothes. Adrienne's tank top and sandals were found miles from her remains. Her shorts and underwear? Never recovered. Authorities say this fits a pattern. Victims of extreme heat often shed clothing. Delirious, their brains boiling as temperatures rise. But skeptics fire back. If she undressed herself, why were her clothes scattered in different directions? Why no traces of her DNA on the fabric after days in the desert? Second, the coyotes. Animal activity explains the scattering of her bones. But here's the catch. When her remains were discovered, there were no paw prints, no scat, no signs of predators near the site, just bones lying in the open, as if placed there. Even the insects told a strange story. Blowflies, which swarm corpses within hours, were absent, as if Adrienne's body wasn't there long enough to attract them. Third, the cab. Adrienne called Desert Cab at 3:17 a.m. The driver arrived at 3:24 a.m. 7 minutes. In that window, she vanished. 7 minutes isn't enough time to wander 30 miles into the desert. So how did her remains end up near Tonopah? The math doesn't add up. Now, the theories. Theory 1, the predator. Could someone have intercepted her after that call? A stranger lurking in the shadows of Mill Avenue's alleys? A serial killer? Tempe had no known predators at the time. But unsolved cases in nearby Phoenix, women gone missing after nights out, still haunt the region. No evidence ties them to Adrienne, but coincidence is a flimsy alibi. Theory 2, the ex-boyfriend. Adrienne's last text was to her ex. We need to talk. He had a history of aggression. Police records show domestic disputes. But he had an alibi, home with his mother, confirmed by security footage. Still, rumors linger. A Reddit thread dissects his Facebook posts from that week. A deleted photo, a cryptic lyric, nothing concrete. Theory 3, the wrong turn. Maybe Adrienne, disoriented and barefoot, stumbled into the desert. Maybe she hitchhiked, climbing into a stranger's car to escape the heat. A trucker reported seeing a girl matching her description near Interstate 10 at dawn. But without proof, it's just another ghost story. Theory 4, the cover-up. Conspiracy forums whisper darker ideas. What if someone with power was involved? A cop? A politician? Why else would the case go cold so fast? But Tempe is a small town. Secrets here don't stay buried, they crack under the heat. Then there's the wild card. What if Adrienne wanted to disappear? She'd been fighting with friends, arguing with her ex. Maybe she staged it all, but her bank accounts were untouched. Her social media, silent. And the desert? No one chooses to die like that. The truth is, every theory collides with a wall. The police say it's simple, a drunk, distressed girl made a fatal mistake. But her friends swear Adrienne knew the desert. She'd hiked those trails before. She wasn't reckless, just unlucky. Forensic experts say the lack of evidence is the evidence. The desert erases. The heat corrupts. But when a family loses a child, accident feels like a betrayal. It offers no villain to blame, no justice to seek, just a silent, indifferent son. So where does that leave us? With a 19-year-old girl's bones, with a cab that arrived too late, with a desert that holds its secrets tighter than a fist. Adrienne Salinas' case is a Rorschach test. See what you want to see, a tragedy, a crime, a mystery. But the truth? It's buried somewhere in the sand, waiting for a storm to blow it free. Until then, all we have are questions, and the bass notes keep pounding. 10 years, a decade of sunrises, a decade of questions. Adrienne Salinas' case file still sits in a Tempe Police Department cabinet. Its pages yellowing at the edges. No arrests, no suspects, no justice, just a family's grief fossilized into paperwork. So why does this case refuse to die? Let's start with the obvious. No body, no crime, except there was a body, sort of, bones scattered across the desert. stripped of flesh, stripped of answers, without a crime scene, without DNA, without a clear cause of death. Prosecutors have nothing to charge. No jury, no trial, just a void where the truth should be. But it's deeper than that. Adrienne's case is a perfect storm of dead ends. First, the desert. It's not just a location, it's an accomplice. The 120-degree heat cooked away DNA. Sandstorms buried footprints. Coyotes turned bones into chew toys, scattering them like dice. By the time her remains were found, even the best forensic experts could only shrug. Was this trauma, or just nature's brutality? No one knows. Second, the timeline. That 7-minute window between her cab call and the driver's arrival is a black hole. No cameras caught her. No witnesses saw her. All we have is a broken phone, a lone sandal, and a desert that laughs at logic. How do you solve a puzzle when half the pieces are missing? Third, the theories. Too many maybes. Not enough facts. Was it the ex-boyfriend? A stranger? An accident? Every lead dissolves like sugar in water. Take the ex. He had motive. A history of anger. But also an alibi. Security footage shows him miles away, asleep on his couch. When Adrienne vanished, the trucker who claimed he saw her, his story shifted with every interview. Was she crying? Was she alone? Even he isn't sure anymore. Then there's the human factor. Detectives retire. Witnesses forget. Families, well, they try to move on. Adrienne's mother still visits the desert where her daughter's bones were found. She leaves flowers in the sand, knowing the wind will steal them by morning. I just want to know if she suffered. She told a reporter last year. But the desert won't even give me that. The police haven't quit. Not officially. But resources fade. New cases pile up, missing teens, overdoses, car crashes. Adrienne's file sinks deeper into the stack. Another ghost in a system stretched too thin. And the public? We're fickle. True crime fans dissect her case online, spinning conspiracies in Reddit threads. Was it a cartel? A cult? But clicks don't solve crimes. Attention shifts to the next mystery, the next viral tragedy. Adrienne becomes a thumbnail, a hashtag, a cautionary tale for late-night walks. But here's the truth no one wants to say. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Not because they're impossible, not because the guilty are geniuses, but because life is messy, because evidence rots, because memories blur, because justice isn't a math problem, it's a lottery. Adrienne's case stays cold for the same reason 1,000 others do. We need monsters to blame. But sometimes the monster is a moonless night, a wrong turn, a cab that arrives 7 minutes too late. The Salinas family knows this. They've stopped asking, who did this? And started asking, how do we live with not knowing? There's no therapy for that. No closure. Just a hollow space where their daughter used to be. So why keep talking about Adrienne? Because her story isn't about answers. It's about the ache of uncertainty. The way a single unsolved case can crack a community's faith in safety. In justice. In the idea that the world makes sense. 10 years later, the desert still whispers. The file still sits. And somewhere between the facts and the fiction, Adrienne Salinas remains forever 19, a girl frozen in the dark, waiting for a truth that never comes. What haunts us isn't always the dead. Sometimes, it's the silence they leave behind. Adrienne Salinas' story isn't just about a girl who vanished. It's about how a single night, one wrong turn, one unanswered call can unravel a lifetime of hopes, memories, and tomorrows. It's about the cracks in our world that swallow people whole, leaving families to claw at the earth for answers that never come. Think about it. A 19-year-old dials a cab. A driver arrives 7 minutes later. 7 minutes. In that sliver of time, Adrienne stepped out of the light and into a void. No struggle, no scream, just gone. But this isn't just her story. It's about the mother who still texts Adrienne's old phone number, pretending she'll reply. It's about the detectives who lie awake, replaying those 7 minutes like a broken record. It's about the friends who flinch at the sound of a dial tone. Forever stuck in that summer night, we tell ourselves the world makes sense, that systems work, that justice finds a way. But Adrienne's case is a mirror held up to our blind spots. How many missing persons cases go cold because evidence evaporates? Because resources dry up? Because the public looks away? The desert didn't kill Adrienne Salinas. Indifference did. Indifference to the gaps in our safety nets, to the shortcuts in investigations, to the way we reduce tragedies like hers to true crime entertainment. Binge-watched and forgotten. But here's the truth. Adrienne isn't a case. She's a daughter, a friend, a girl who loved terrible reality TV and burned her toast every morning. She's the laugh you'd recognize in a crowd, the voice that's silenced now. And she's still out there, in the whispers of strangers, in the weight of an unsolved file, in the desert wind that howls like a ghost with no name. If you know anything, a detail buried in your memory, a rumor you're too afraid to repeat, a gut feeling you can't shake, now is the time. Not for clicks, not for closure, but because Adrienne deserves more than a footnote in a cold case archive. The hardest part? We may never know what happened that night. The desert might keep its secrets forever, but silence is a choice. And every voice that speaks up, every tip, every memory shared, is a flicker of light in the dark. Adrienne Salinas can't come home, but her story can. Let it haunt you. Let it push you. Let it remind you that behind every unsolved mystery is someone who mattered. Someone who still does. Because the dead don't speak. But the living, we have no excuse.